Hey there, welcome to the chat, and welcome to the stream. I'm Father Roderick and about to record my weekly show. Yeah, and that was a video that autoplayed. Thanks, autoplay, not. Just gonna quickly repost the link to the stream on Facebook and Twitter. Let's see, where do I look? Right there, live shows, live stream, and then I need a shareable link. There we go. Very good. Now I go to my main Facebook page. I've been moving around some lamps in the background and stuff. I'm not sure if this looks good, but you know, you got to experiment a little bit. I'm still looking for a better look for these live shows. And I have some professional lights. Why does Facebook not load? I don't know. The mysteries of Facebook. Okay, let's click on this link. Maybe that'll work. Usually when I leave Facebook open for the night, because I've not been on this computer at home, things get out of whack for some reason. Okay, join me live for my weekly show! Exclamation point, because why not? Here we go. Let's post that on. And of course, it takes the worst thumbnail of the video, like the one where I'm like, that. Thanks. Looks like I'm sleeping there. Okay, and let's post the other one on Twitter. Where do I have that? Right there. Tweet. I wish I could do this automatically, but I haven't figured out how. Oh, great. Forgot to copy the message. There we go. Copy. Well, the thumbnail really shows that this is going to be a snooze fest. Okay, there we go. Let's see if that works. Does it post or does it not post? And what thumbnail does it use? Oh, there, it finally, on Twitter, strangely enough, it uses the nice, what is it? The page photo that I have. I'll never really understand. I think I can do like a how do you call it? Like force the Facebook to refresh the share attachment. That's what it's called. Although I'm not sure if this may just, oh no, just this is just the thumbnail that YouTube has chosen in its wisdom. You kind of stop worrying about what you look like, because you always look like a dork on social media. All right, let me get my my show notes, and then we'll get going. Hello, Warlock, Fat Thor, Brandon, Lucas, Andy, Adam, Tamas, and Patton Frodo. Very good. Lots of Obi-Wan Kenobi prequel memes galore, as usual. Hello, Ansgar. Ansgar John. And Ruben also. We've got some Dutch people in the chat. That's great. Alrighty. Where are my show notes? Oh, it's in OneNote. Here we go. So I put these two lights in place now. So I've got a floodlight here that's giving this white colored light. And then I've got a spot that is shining a little bit of more orangey light on this part of the face. So I could move the camera a little bit to have more of this one wall is dark brown. But then on that side of the door, it would all be white. It's not very pretty. So I tried to move the IKEA Billy to that side of the door, but it's just, I still don't like the look of this studio. So something to work on during the during the holidays, I guess. Hey, Razgriz from Berlin, Connecticut. Is there a Berlin in Connecticut, USA? Wow, that's crazy. All right, let's get going. Because I have a lot on my plate today. All right. Enough with the Star Wars memes. Let's get going. We need to get some work done. Here we go. Well, hello there, and welcome back to another episode of my weekly show on Father Roderick podcasting and streaming on YouTube from the heart of the Netherlands, the beautiful city of Amersfoort, the Netherlands, where the sun is shining outside. But I'm right here inside the studios behind the microphone to give you, well, a little bit of distraction from your day-to-day life. This episode is brought to you, like all my episodes and everything I do basically on social media, thanks to my patrons. Over at patreon.com/Father Roderick, there is a small community that I invite you to join by becoming a monthly supporter of my work. And you can give basically whatever you can miss. If this show gives you value, helps you, entertains you, then you could do something back for the community. It's not for me, but it enables me to help to make more of this content and to keep it advertisement free, because I don't want to bother you with advertisements for mattresses or insurances or all that stuff.
You know what's going on? This is what's happening in your world.
Face it, Catholics rule. We got Boston, South America, the good part of Ireland, and we're making serious inroads in Mozambique, baby.
You've taken your first step into a larger world.
So these are the busiest weeks of the year. There'll be holiday working and even more working until I am dead. That's basically these last few weeks leading up to Christmas. And yes, it's just around the corner. We're like 5 weeks away from Christmas. It's crazy. Are the busiest of the year for me in terms of production, getting ready, because it's both extremely busy in the parishes, as you can imagine, with Advent and all the celebrations, but also in my television work, because, well, we're right in the middle of preparing the next season of TV shows. We are working really hard on expanding the plans for 2020 for our Dutch channel. And then, of course, I've got plenty of things to do in the YouTube sphere, in the podcast for the podcasts. We're working hard on the new plan for the patrons to involve you more and also give you more in return as a thank you for your support. So a lot of work. And what I try to do, and that's why I'm working so hard these days, is to clear the way for Christmas. The last year, right before Christmas, I've just been working day and night. It was an extremely busy production time, and I worked right until, I think I've been working like all day the 24th of December until the moment Mass started. I think I was even filming, I don't know, like an hour before I had to go to Mass. I don't want that to happen anymore. And then I also worked throughout the holiday, the Christmas holiday. This year, I want to make sure that ideally 2 weeks before Christmas, I'm done with the bulk of the work. That means that now I have to work in advance quite a bit so that after Christmas, I can really take 2 weeks off, maybe even, go out of the country. But anyway, just to rest and take a break, because, well, I've noticed at the beginning of this year what happens if you don't take a break. It is this kind of creative work is so exhausting, and even creatively, it's important to sometimes just slow down, step away from everything, and come back with renewed energy. So that's what I'm planning to do. Of course, whether that will work or not, you'll probably hear it in one of these shows, and I talk a little bit more about the specifics in my other show that you can find over at tridio.com, which is called The Walk. And that one is not on YouTube, by the way. This one is, and I always record this show in front of a live audience, which is a lot of fun. So we've got people from the Netherlands, from the United States, from France, from Germany right now in the chat. That's the fun part of streaming in conjunction with recording the audio for the podcast feed. There is people react and ask questions, etc. For the patrons, by the way, I always record like an after show, it's a special podcast feed. We're also, by the way, working on a solution for those of you that are donating, but not through Patreon. Behind the scenes, we're working really hard on implementing Salesforce, which is a CRM, so a customer relations management software, because we have so many different venues that people use to support us and to also participate in our mission and in what we do, that we need to have more powerful software to make sure that we keep track of everyone. And so Inge upstairs is working really hard on trying to master Salesforce, because it's a software that we haven't used until now. But it's going to be, once it's installed and once it's in place, I think it's going to allow us for much, much better communication with the audiences, with you. One of the things that I'm still working really hard on is both filming for Christmas. Tomorrow I have to go really early to the south of the country, film a Christmas episode there with, among other people, the local bishop. So that's going to be fun, but also exhausting. And I'm working hard still on editing. I'm editing the second part of my Ireland documentary. The first one airs today, this afternoon. And the other one will air in 2 weeks from now. But that is always a ton of work. Even more work this time, because I have filmed a lot of the footage while on vacation with my new phone without really realizing that I would turn this into a television show. So I almost don't speak to the camera in Dutch. I do speak a lot to the camera in English. That's good for you, because that will allow me to make an English version, like a recut of the footage, which I think will work a lot better. But I have to write this long voiceover, and it's like writing a book, you know. It just takes so much more time than just chatting. But anyway, it's a lot of fun to be able to share everything that I experienced in Ireland, because the views are amazing, the land is amazing, the history is fantastic, and being able to share that with a wide audience via television, and later on hopefully also via YouTube. That's a lot of that's very gratifying work. In that same context, I've been planning ahead for 2020, and I was looking so I got to produce 15 episodes for the first half of the next year, and I always love to do travel shows. However, knowing how busy I am, I can't just always be on a plane or in a train or in a car traveling the world. But I did do a lot of travel in the past. And so I proposed 2 episodes about the time that I spent in Australia and New Zealand. So I've been going back through that footage. In Australia, I went to Sydney, to Melbourne, Adelaide, went to the Blue Mountains, did a lot of interviews as well, and never, ever posted that stuff, not even on YouTube. It's crazy, and it's good material. It's a little bit old. I mean, it's from 2013. So in the meantime, I've gotten a bit grayer and everything. Although most of my face, I think for people that don't see me every day, they probably won't even notice that it's a little bit older material. But the interviews are still, in terms of content, very good. So I think with a voiceover, I can probably work around it and kind of update it with, the situation in Australia right now. But a lot of I was just checking, is this still there? Are these people still active there? Well, most of it still holds up pretty well. And then New Zealand is even more timeless, because New Zealand is basically a road movie that I filmed there, traveling over the southern island to the places where they filmed The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. And it is filmed, unfortunately, with my old camera, so I'm much more critical now about that, and I've way more experience. I have 6 years of extra experience in filming, so I'm dying to go back there and redo all these travels properly. But in the meantime, it's still fun to reuse. I was there, I think, in springtime, and so the weather is fantastic. Everything is just gorgeous. Plus, it was my first time on the Southern Island, so you see my excitement and just if you've seen one of my trailer reaction videos, it's basically that for 5 days. I'm like, oh my gosh, oh, they filmed this here. Oh, this is amazing. I recognize this place. I recognize those mountains. It's just like totally giddy. And so it's great footage. And what I'm going to do is also do the same. Now that I know that it works to use existing footage and write a voiceover and let that be the lead, I think I can do this with the Australian and New Zealand material as well. And again, it's good for you as well, because that will be the preparation for like an international version of that same story, which can be even bigger because also there I did most of the talking in English, and my Dutch audience is kind of like, I don't think I can talk English to my Dutch audience. They wouldn't understand. But it gives me a reason to, add even that material back into the edit. But the bulk of the work will already have been done for the TV episode. So that's a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it. This is the kind of work that gives me energy. It doesn't cost me energy. Sometimes you do work where it's like, got to do that again. And, always working for other people's expectations. And I'm more and more learning to stand firm and to say, well, this is what I do. This is my story. This is what I like to do. This is what I like to share. And if you want something else, then go elsewhere. And it's hard for a people pleaser like me to do that and to just make your mark and say, well, this is my strength and this is my story. And this is what I'm going to do. But I'm learning to be more and more firm in that. I have, just before I started this recording, I got this idea. I was talking with my editor and we were exchanging ideas, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, I know what I'm going to propose. I have this vision of what I want to do on television. It's different from what I do right now, but at the same time it's kind of continuation of the things that I've been experimenting with. But I want to go full force on this in the second half of the year. So that's what I'm going to pitch next week. That is if I survive this week. Starting to get a little bit of pain, my throat is aching. I hope I don't get sick. We'll see. Anyway, sick or not, time goes on and I need to work. So hopefully I'll survive until Christmas. By the way, one of the things I'm looking forward to is building the Harry Potter Advent calendar that one of my listeners sent me. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. But so far, you've only seen the outside of the box, but I want to get building and share that on YouTube. Always fun to build Lego.
How do you not like movies?
They're predictable. Like, the guy gets the girl, and that kid sees dead people, and Darth Vader is Luke's father.
Not liking movies is like not liking puppies.
They're fine. I just get bored and never make it to the end.
You need a movie education. You need a movication. I'm going to give it to you.
So, movies and TV shows. Well, as you can imagine, just like most of you, I've watched a lot of Disney Plus, and I'm so sorry again. I apologize for all of you that are still waiting for Disney Plus. Good things come to those who have to wait. Trust me, it's really, really good, and I'm really enjoying it. By the way, there's a question in the chat whether the Salesforce that I was talking about, if we get that with the the donation principle that they have. Yes, it is. We are a nonprofit organization, so we basically get to use most of Salesforce for free, and then we have to buy these extra modules or rent them for integration with Patreon. That's it. Anyway, so Disney Plus. One thing that I've been watching and is mesmerizing television is the Imagineering Story. This is basically the story of how Disney built up its empire and became the Disney that we now all know. And it shows you these early years where Walt, it's mostly about the building. The first episode is about the building of Disneyland. And then the first steps into envisioning an even bigger version of Disneyland, which originally was supposed to be like a living, breathing city. Walt really wanted to build the city of the future. And then ultimately after his death, they kind of toned it down and it became just basically a bigger version of the theme park that is in Anaheim. But what makes this documentary so fascinating is that the filmmaker, this is a female filmmaker who had already experience in making documentaries, got access to all the archives and all the material shot from the early 30s of the previous century up until today. And to go into that archival material and rework it, update it, resample it, and tell that story. And a lot of what you see has never been shown before. I mean, I've watched a lot of YouTube documentaries about Disney. I love these stories of how a business came about, how people have built up. I mean, I love reading the biography of Steve Jobs, Microsoft, all that stuff. Just recently, I read the book about the making of The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit from Peter Jackson's perspective. And there's so much you can learn from these visionary people that have built up something that is now something we share and love over the world. But there's always so much trial and error and lessons learned in those personal stories. And I always apply it to my own situation. I'm like, oh, wow. And it encourages me when you see Walt Disney building Disney World, especially. You see how he bought just secretly just entire swamps in Florida, and the first phase of construction, you see these early buildings. You see like the railway station, Main Street, the castle, but it's built in the middle of nowhere. The entire it's like almost like they're building it on another planet. It's so remote, so it's all just completely, wasteland. And if you see what it has become now, it takes a vision, it takes this dream where you can already see what the goal is going to be to keep on building. Because when you see where it started, it's like, I cannot imagine that this ever becoming Disney World, but it did. And that to me is a great stimulus for what I'm working at. It's like, always dare to dream bigger than just what you're doing right now. Never stay in your safe zone. Always step out of that safe zone, try something new, and dare to also say goodbye to stuff that you did in the past. Like one of the biggest changes in my own personal life as a media producer was to step away from SQPN, which was mostly focused on podcasting and on making all these series about popular culture and bridging the gap between popular culture and faith. And I've been doing that for more than 10 years. Loved it. Learned a lot. But at a certain moment, I felt that my aspirations went into more and more in the direction of video, documentaries, challenging myself to try something new. And I knew that in order to do that well, you need an organization and you need focus. And so it means, because that podcasting formula still works and SQPN is thriving, but I had to step away from it in order to be able to focus on something new. And I'm so glad that I did, because now, 2 years later, look how far I've come. And I'm still in the process of getting to the next level. And it's ongoing. That's what you see in this Imagineering story. You see that Walt Disney, once he built Disneyland, he was like, let's build Disney World. He just kept pushing everyone with this creative vision. And once he died, there was this whole time where they had to relearn how to dream big like Walt Disney did. So the second episode is called What Would Walt Disney Do? And it's all about this one person transmitting basically his framework, his mindset, his dreams to an entire organization, which is, for me, as a kind of the leader of this platform that I'm building now, is also the big challenge. Don't stay alone in what you do, but try to get the entire organization to carry the mission and to be able to do something that you can do yourself, but still in that same line of vision. That's what happened with Disney World. And this is also, there's another reason why this documentary is so fascinating. It's because it is a good lesson when it comes to film preservation. The director tells us how when she went into the cold storage, because all these, it's all celluloid. So these first 20, 30 years, everything was filmed on real film. And in many cases, what they discovered was still in negative. So they had to resample that and improve. But it was because it's on film, they were able to upscale it to HD very easily. And it looks pristine. There are moments in these, especially the early footage of Disney World, where this could have been filmed just a couple of years ago. That's how good it looks. And of course, it's been kind of polished and digitally denoised and whatnot. But it's really amazing. And then they slowly get into the time frame where they switched from film to video. And that's where the horror begins. And she describes how difficult it was to take those videotapes that were often also very badly preserved, and videotapes degrade over time. You know that if you have some old VHS tapes lying around, ideally you should go and rewatch them or at least rewind them a number of times per year, so that the magnetic material doesn't lose its charge. Because if it does, you start to really lose the image quality, and at one point it will become unwatchable. Plus, of course, it's on this very flimsy tape, which can also start to decompose and break and whatnot. So preservation of video material from that era was always super difficult. Of course, those early video cameras were very low resolution. You've got all these, lines, and it was all interlaced. So brushing that material up to make it watchable for the next couple of documentaries apparently was one of their major challenges. And it's only now that with the high-resolution cameras, they're able, again, to film digitally, not even on the same level as film. It's not by accident that the new Star Wars movies are filmed again on real film. They refuse to use digital cameras because they know that if you use film, you can always go back and resample it at a higher resolution. There's much more longevity of film than of digital formats. And that is something that I can totally relate to. I mentioned in the introduction that I was working on 2 documentaries based on material that I filmed in Australia and New Zealand. And back then I was using the top-notch camera. It was a Sony camera, professional or semi-professional camera that filmed in HD, which at the time was a big deal. Because when I bought that camera, the TV industry had just switched to HD. And I still worked with a lot of cameramen that told me, hey, I'm not going to buy a new camera. SD has been good. So regular old-fashioned television format has been good for decades. So I'm not going to invest 40,000 euros into a new camera just to do HD. And so there was still this old mindset. It's good enough, nobody complains. But of course, at that time, we didn't know how quickly these huge TVs would become affordable. Just like I bought a TV, half a year ago? And I paid the same. So I had a small TV. I paid less than I paid for that small TV. And now it's just almost like it looks like a cinema screen. It's so big. And it's because this LCD, LED technology is getting cheaper very, very rapidly. So we're soon approaching the time that our television wall will probably be bigger than what we see Marty McFly use in Back to the Future Episode 2, because, well, it's so cheap. But of course, the bigger the screen, the more quality your image needs to have. And so there was a time that HD was considered to be the nec ultra of quality, and who would ever need better than HD? And now we're using these 4K televisions, and with the advent of VR technology, where we will be able to, watch movies in a virtual environment, super high resolution, it's going to get even more important to film in the highest quality possible. That's, I think, why Disney is reinvesting in old-fashioned technology, to film everything on film so that later on they can always upgrade. One of the tragedies of the prequels was that George Lucas, I think, was ahead of the curve, always tried to innovate. And thanks to that, of course, let's not forget that he pushed the industry also to move ahead. But what he did, I think, the mistake he made by choosing for digital cameras for the prequels was that back then they could only film in 2K, and that was seen as such an improvement over HD. But nowadays, now that we have 4K televisions and we've got 4K projection in our movie theaters, that 2K is not enough. And of course, they can upscale, but all the special effects were made for 2K. And if you upscale those special effects and you don't have access to the original renderings anymore, then it becomes a blurry mess. And you can totally tell. So I'm now watching a lot of the movies, and I was so stunned to discover that Disney Plus not only has 4K versions of the more recent movies, but this is the first time that I've seen A New Hope in 4K. And it blew me away how good it looks. It is far beyond, and I'm not sure if this has ever been released in 4K before Disney Plus. Not that I can remember. But they have this 4K version of A New Hope, of Empire Strikes Back. It looks glorious. But then you go back and you watch the prequels on Disney Plus, and it is, it's terrible. It's really, and not just that, not just the prequels, but all the extra effects that they put into A New Hope, like when the land speeder enters Mos Eisley, and you know how George Lucas wanted to have Mos Eisley look like this sprawling, busy city. And so he added Jawas and these walking dinosaurs. And you're watching that now in 4K, and it just hurts your eyes. It's so, like, even the cheapest video game looks better. And it's actually, I don't think that they should leave it like this. I truly believe that they should go back and redo all of the special effects. Just, hire George Lucas to help you with that. But it is this. I don't want Star Wars to be preserved like this. And if George Lucas says this is the final version, then I'd rather just have him take out all the special effects that they added and go back to the original. Just give us back the restored, the way it was. But because then at least it would be consistent. But now you've got this really high quality scan of the original film material. And then you've got this ultra low resolution, horrible looking special effect mess that they added for the special editions. And it doesn't hold up. And it totally takes you out of the movie. So that would be my prayer. Like, let's redo this one more time and do it properly. Make it photorealistic. And there is so much that could be improved. And hey, George Lucas has already shown that he still has made some tweaks to A New Hope. They added Greedo right before he shoots Han Solo, or I should say, right before Han Solo shoots Greedo, because Han shot first. There is another line that is added. So Greedo says something I think in Huttese, and it's the same phrase that is uttered, I think, in the Return of the Jedi. It means something like, "This is how you will end," or something like that. But people were like, "Oh my gosh, he's still tinkering with A New Hope. When is this going to end?" But I think that was a hopeful sign. It's like George Lucas is not afraid to add stuff, to fix stuff, and it's not always a success. But any change in the original trilogy to take these additions of the special editions, these special effects that at the time may have looked okay, but are now so horribly outdated. Any attempt to update those, I think, would be welcome for me as a Star Wars fan, and hopefully also for the rest of the Star Wars loving film. So, what I was going to say before I got distracted by Star Wars was, I now look at the stuff that I filmed in New Zealand and Australia, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, that it doesn't look good. It's not stabilized very well. There was chromatic aberrations because of the cheap lens that I was using. There is no shallow depth of field in any of these shots. And I went to the Shire. I went to the film set at Matamata, and it's I mean, it looks great because, well, the environment was great, but I'm like, I have these like 5-second shots of everything. Like, why didn't I leave the camera running? This is not enough. This shot should have been like 4 times as long. And it's all because I think I didn't know what I was doing. I hadn't produced a single TV episode when I went to Australia and New Zealand. So now what I'm going to try to do is take all the experience that I have in editing mostly, and in narrating a story through voiceover, and also tweaking and color correcting the stuff, because even the colors look terrible. Like back then, I loved what came out of that small camera, and now I'm looking at it as like, the colors are so muted and the white balance is off, but a lot of that is fixable. That's the advantage of working digitally. You can actually do a lot in terms of stabilizing or slowing down the footage, I did a lot of with the Irish footage. I did a lot of slow motion where you can just tell Premiere Pro, hey, just create some extra frames and make this look smooth. So you slow down something. I had a lot of these also shots where Because of the voiceover, it needed to be a little bit longer, but, well, the shot was just too short, and you just tell it, well, okay, play this at 50%, but make it smooth. And so what the computer then does is it looks at the 2 frames and creates an intermediate frame based on those 2 frames, and all of a sudden your slow motion becomes buttery smooth. That is one scene where there's a beautiful vista. I wanted to use that towards the end of the episode. I usually have like a conclusion. It's a little bit more spiritual. And I wanted to just show the beauty of nature. And there was this one shot during my last walk in Ireland where you see this beautiful green valley, mountains in the distance. And there was this one little sheep that just walks from right to left. And it's this one bright little moving spot, very cute. But the sheep is like, well, I don't care that you're filming. I'm in a hurry. I want to eat my grass. And so he just walks by way too fast. And if I could direct a sheep, I would tell him, just slow down. Let's do that again. Just I need a little bit more. And now I'm just, okay, let's just play this at 50%, but make the sheep move smoothly. And so now I have this very relaxed, bouncy, almost as if it's a sheep on the moon. He just like hops around very graciously, and there's no living sheep that could walk like that. But it still looks okay thanks to technology. So hopefully when I start working on my footage from Australia and New Zealand, I'll be able to improve a lot of the original material. But if I had known how important this footage would be and what kind of footage I would need now 6 years later, I would have taken another camera. I would have taken different shots. I would have read up on depth of field and white balance and all that stuff that I had no idea. I just pressed record and started shooting. Yeah, that's how important it is to never really switch to new technology too quickly. Same with photos. Every photo that I have from the time that I studied in Rome was made on one of those floppy disk digital cameras, the Mavicas, and it's so bad. And it was one of the most important moments of my life. And had I taken regular photos, they would have looked amazing. I've got photos from my childhood where I was a baby. My mom was a great photographer, and you can, that looks like art. Those photos. She had like this amazing camera with beautiful lenses, and it still holds up. Whereas the digital stuff that I took photos with for many years, it's unwatchable. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. The things you learn over time. Let's go and visit the peculiar bunch. At least in faith, some things always stay the same.
Catholics rock!
Here at the Peculiar Bunch, we're always happy to tell you everything you always wanted to know about Catholics, but you were afraid to ask.
Catholics can be a peculiar bunch. No meat on Friday.
Oh, meat? What do they eat? Light bulbs?
Well, today I want to briefly talk about the winter festivities, and especially those that have a religious background, and why that is linked to the poor.
Man, you guys got more crazy rules than Blockbuster Video.
So this past Sunday was the World Sunday for the Poor, World Day for the Poor. And that is celebrated in the Catholic Church, and also, of course, invites us to do something for the poor. And our current Pope, Pope Francis, wanted to really show that it's not enough to just thoughts and prayers when it comes to the poor is not enough. They don't need thoughts and prayers. They need food and clothing and shelter and heat and soup. And so very close to the Vatican, near the famous colonnades, there was a building that was for a long time in use by a religious congregation of sisters. However, about a year ago, the sisters left, and this building was still standing there. And I think it's property of the Vatican. It's probably extraterritorial ground for the Vatican. And Pope Francis ordered his, he has a bishop that works for him among the poor, and that's his only mission. And he ordered him to come up with a plan for that building, but to make it a home for the poor. Now, a year later, that work has been finished, and on Saturday, before before the World Day of the Poor, Pope Francis visited this home of the poor. And it was a sight to behold, because the Pope was just eating with them. The poor, the homeless people, the sick, they can get shelter there. They can get food in the winter when temperatures drop in Rome, and can get very cold in Rome. You may not think that Rome is cold in the winter, but it is. It's because it's Northern Europe, right? We're much more northern than most of the United States. So winters can be very harsh. So they can even increase the capacity during the wintertime so that the homeless people in the center of the town don't have to sleep in the streets. But they can also get, and that is new, medical treatment. There are psychologists available if they need to talk, and quite a few of the homeless are struggling with psychological issues, and sometimes their psychiatric problems have led to them becoming homeless and basically helpless, and so they can get free medication and everything. I thought it was amazing to hear how much the Vatican is currently investing in taking care of the poor. And the most impressive aspect of that story was that this bishop that works for Pope Francis invited the contractors who were working on the renovation of that house to hire the homeless. He said, if you need help with painting the walls or whatever, refurbishing this house, the first ones you should hire are the homeless people. And then some of those turned out to be such good workers that they were hired for real, also for future projects. And so it was the project itself became also a place where some of those homeless people could start literally a new future and could be, step away for good of the streets of Rome. I think a beautiful example of how an initiative like that can truly make the world a better place. Now, also very beautiful, I think, that this took place this past Sunday, that is the Day of the Poor, because this time of the year, November, December, traditionally have always been times where the rich would take extra care for the poor. And I think I've explained this before when I talked about Halloween, but a lot of those winter festivities that we now know and that we associate with consumerism, right? And there are sometimes Catholics, I see them kind of protesting against that. Oh, Halloween, it's all about candy. We should completely get rid of Halloween and only celebrate All Saints' Day, etc. Same thing with Christmas. A lot of pushback, all this food and all the spending on presents that we don't use. What we often forget is that the gift giving originally was not gift giving of the rich to the rich, but it was gift giving of the rich to the poor. That is why in many of these traditions you've got children going door to door. That's basically the evolution of a tradition in which during these harsher months of the year the poor would go, and this is beginning of winter, they would go from door to door and receive food, receive clothes, receive some money, so that for the hardest months of the winter, January, February, they would have what they need to survive those months. And let me give you a few examples. That was the case for Halloween. That's why on Hallows Eve, the poor would go from door to door. In the Netherlands, in some areas, you have the Feast of St. Martin, this French saint who or actually it was a Roman saint, but very popular saint in France, who shared half of his mantle with a beggar at the gates of the city. And then later on that night, he gets a dream where he sees Jesus appearing to him, and Jesus is wearing that half of his mantle as a sign to show what you did for the least of mine, you did for me. That is basically also the religious motivation to be good for the poor, because it's in the poor that you encounter Jesus. And these are the words of Jesus himself. Whatever you did for the smallest, the weakest, the sick, that's what you did for me. And that will also be on which you will be judged later on. It's not going to be just about your membership of your local parish or how much money you gave to the church or how many rosaries you prayed. Jesus himself says it's all going to be about what did you do for your neighbor? What did you do for the poor? And so that's something that if we're smart, we're going to invest in. So St. Martin's Feast, you have here in the Netherlands, just started last week, these weeks around the feast day of St. Nicholas, a very important saint in the Netherlands, of course, also because he was a patron saint for the people at sea. And of course, well, we're a seafaring nation. And so the main church in the Co-Cathedral of Amsterdam is dedicated to St. Nicholas. But here we have this tradition where a couple of weeks before his feast day on December the 6th, the St. Nicholas is welcomed and in the country. And the children will put their shoes near the chimney so that St. Nicholas can fill them with presents or with candy. And that too, originally, was from a tradition in the Catholic Church where the poor children could bring their shoe to the church, and then the parishioners would fill those shoes with food, with a bit of money or candy, because poor children couldn't afford candy. So beautiful tradition. And of course it's now all turned into consumerism, but you also see now trends where in parishes at least they're incentivizing the kids to turn that feast around, and instead of always having it about their wish list, give some of your presents to children that whose parents don't have money to buy presents. And don't just give away your leftover toys, give away the ones that you like, because if you like to play with those toys, then those kids will probably also like to play with that. And I would highly encourage parishes to do that, to turn it. And you could also do that for Halloween. Why not? Why not do like a collection of candy for kids in poor families, or just do a bigger collection of winter coats or whatever, and go distribute that on All Hallows Eve to the people in the streets. There are so many things that we can do to reframe these holidays and to change it from a feast of consumerism into a feast of giving, because that is what approaches us to Christmas, which ultimately the ultimate gift of Christmas is God giving himself in Jesus. And so we should, I think, if we want to bring Christ back into Christmas, then it's not just about pious activities around Christmas. It's about recognizing Christ there on your doorstep, in the poor, in the people that are in the margins of society, and follow God's example by giving something of yourself, of what you have, to the poor. That is, I think, how we can totally reboot these important winter feasts and bring them back into the original tradition. And there's a lot of discussion going on in our societies about, our cultural heritage, and then there's also a lot of warfare, the culture wars, and it's always we have to hold. But a lot of these culture wars are about the superficial stuff. It's about holding on to our traditions, etc. But we should, if we want to hold on to what is valuable, we should go back to what do these feasts mean, and how we're faithful people from the inspiration of their faith, using these festivities, using these traditions to help others. That is the core of what we're supposed to be as followers of Jesus. And I think if we would step into the culture wars, we wouldn't call them culture wars anymore. We would just say, this is our culture. This is who we are. This is what we do for our culture. And that is what brings people together, not the warfare about, liturgy and stuff. Anyway, that's just my take on stuff. Believe it or not, that's up to you.
When did you become an expert in thermonuclear astrophysics?
Last night. Packet. The extraction theory papers. Am I the only one who did the reading?
I want to briefly touch upon something that I expanded upon in my latest episode of my new show on YouTube called Father Roderick Talks Star Wars. And I can't tell you how excited I am that I finally have a YouTube show about Star Wars, where I can just freely, openly talk about Star Wars and go in depth and doing reviews of The Mandalorian in this case. And then once The Mandalorian is over, we'll go back to talking about episode 9. And there's so many things that I could talk about. But in my analysis of episode 2, and no spoilers here, of the chapter 2, that's how Disney calls it, chapter 2 of The Mandalorian, I went in depth to examine how that episode reflected the hero's journey from the writings of Joseph Campbell. And if you've never read a book by Joseph Campbell, one book that should be on your reading list is called The Hero with 1,000 Faces. And it basically, it's the first time that he explains what he calls the hero's journey, which is a monomyth, in a sense that it is, mono means one, it is the same story that you will find in all the various myths and religious stories, fairy tales, but also modern movies like Star Wars. George Lucas was hugely influenced by the writings of Joseph Campbell, and the hero's journey is literally the foundation, the narrative foundation of Star Wars, and especially of the first episodes that he made. And sometimes we feel like something is Star Wars, and we can't really put a finger on it. It's not just the lightsabers, it's not just the cinematography or the way the ships look or whatever. But what we truly feel makes Star Wars Star Wars is this hero's journey, this monomyth of the hero. And to briefly summarize it, it's basically the hero, a good story always starts with the hero leaving his familiar world, stopping to do what he used to do, stepping away, and it's the beginning of an adventure. He's called, it's the call to adventure, which he embarks upon, and that is where he becomes a hero, basically. And so it challenges him to step away from the status quo, usually because there's a crisis or a huge challenge. And then the next phase is all these tests and trials that he has to go through. And Star Wars is full of these trials. You think of, Darth Maul trying to prevent Anakin from leaving the planet, and there's so many of these things. And the hero will learn by overcoming these trials, because it's the trials that make him discover his true strength. And then in these trials, you always have a supernatural element. In mythology and fairy tales, there's always a fairy, a wizard, some magical power. Think of all the mythology that Marvel currently is sharing with us in the superhero movies. These superheroes are so fascinating to us because they embody the hero's journey. It's always about regular people that even Superman in a certain way was just a regular guy until he came to our planet, and then the powers of the sun, because it's a different planet, gave him superpowers. And that there's always this supernatural, extraordinary element. Maybe Batman is one of the few that is an exception. He's just a very smart and very rich guy. But you could even say that all his gadgets are a certain form of, that's kind of not really normal. That's not natural to be able to do what he does. So, but it's thanks to the discovery that his strength is not his own, but is transcends him in a certain way, or her, that he will learn that his future will be bright because of something that transcends him. And then the final phase of the hero's journey is always the return to the world that he came from with all the lessons learned and applying it in regular life. Think of the story of Bilbo Baggins. He literally is challenged to step out of his very comfortable, cozy world in the Shire, has to go on an adventure, goes from trial to trial. Every time it gets harder for him to survive. And then finally, when the dragon is beaten, there's always a fight with a dragon, symbolizing our fears and everything. And once the dragon is beaten, then he returns to the Shire, only to discover how hard it is to apply his lessons learned to the world that basically stayed the same. And only slowly after, and then he becomes a storyteller afterwards. So there's so many of these themes that you find in good stories, and that all good stories have in common, hence the name monomyth. So if you want to learn a little bit more about that, I can highly recommend you read Joseph Campbell's book. Campbell died in the 80s of the last century. He wrote this book in the 1949s. There's even a television series that was based on the hero's journey and everything. There's a lot of material out there. Also a lot of collected writings. But if you want to start reading Joseph Campbell, I would say start with The Hero with 1,000 Faces, because that's probably what you're going to learn there is going to help you discover so much in the movies and in the TV series that you love, and you will start to understand why they work so well. That's it for the books. What else have we got left?
We
Science.
are on the cutting edge of technology.
And technology. And science fiction.
Well, what does that mean?
Just plug it in. It's going to say, hey, I see you plugged in a new device. And it's going to load in the appropriate drivers. You'll notice that this scanner built... Whoa.
Well, all your technology stuff, it just ends in disaster.
But there is one more thing.
The final part of my show is always dedicated to everything that has to do with plugging in wires and connecting equipment and technology. And there are a few things that I wanted to mention here briefly. And first of all, it's in the world of games. There are two exciting news items that caught my interest. One of which is the launch, finally, of Google's Stadia. You may have heard me talking about that a long time ago. Google Stadia was Google's attempt to do cloud-based gaming, which means you no longer have to have a very powerful console like an Xbox or a PlayStation 4 or a very high-spec PC to play the latest games. No, Google will run that software on their end in the cloud. They will use all their computing power to give you very, very high-quality graphics. And the only thing you have to do is to get with the program, buy one of their controllers, and then with almost no latency, at least that's the promise, you will be able to play these games. And you can play the same game on your cheap phone or on a big screen TV, a smart TV, or on a computer. It doesn't matter. The only thing that you need to have is a good internet connection. That's also the problem, because there were some... So the service launched yesterday, and of course, people start to try it out, and what do you know? Lag. Of course, no one has not everyone has a stable internet connection. And if you do all the processing elsewhere, and then you have to stream the result to local computers via a Wi-Fi or, a 3G or 4G network, then the bottleneck is not the processing of the images or the software. The bottleneck is going to be the connection. And that's where Google Stadia already shows some cracks. Because I was watching a playthrough of Destiny 2. It's a first-person shooter where everything depends on reaction time. And it had all these hiccups where the frame rate would go down to 3 or 4 frames per second, and that is killing. Literally, it kills you because someone else is faster, has a faster internet connection, and boom, you're dead. So this may be very good for more adventure games or slower games, maybe even RPGs. But for these fast-moving first-person shooters, which still is the bulk of what a lot of gamers want to play, it's not there yet. So I'm not sure if Google is going to win. Plus, the Microsoft is also doing this, and apparently does it much better than Google. Well, and I'm not surprised, because Microsoft has been in this game for much longer and can focus on this much more than Google can. Because Google always has a gazillion different projects that they're working on, and how often have we seen stuff that they launched only to see it a year or two later being canceled? It's the big frustration if you work with Google. I mean, what they make is amazing, but they're not very faithful to their own products, because I don't think that they have a good vision of what they want to be. There's no focus in Google. They're just super rich and super powerful, but there's no focus. That's, I think, their Achilles heel. And you see that also now that they're trying to get a piece of the pie of the gaming world. Then there is another company that wants to hold on to their piece of the pie in the gaming world, and that is Valve. Valve originally was a software company that made video games, and they became very powerful and very rich thanks to their Steam platform, where you could buy games and reinstall them on basically any computer. Once you bought a game, it was in your catalog, and then even if you upgraded your computer, you could still reinstall that game. Steam has made billions selling video games, and for a long time, it was the only platform out there for gamers. Nowadays, you have a lot of competitors. It's similar to the streaming world, on-demand TV. First of all, there was just only Netflix, and now look at how many subscriptions you're supposed to have. You know, Hulu, Netflix, Amazon Prime, Disney Plus. Gosh, the list goes on and on. CBS, and so at one point you can only spend money once. You will have to choose, and the same is happening right now. Also in the world of gaming platforms, more and more of these platforms are now getting exclusive games, and at one point, people will jump ship. And so for Valve, it's very important that their Steam platform stays relevant and has some exclusive content as well. One of their biggest successes in the world of games was a game called Half-Life. They made 2 games, or actually the second game was a whole bunch of games, but they all were called Half-Life 2. They also made Portal, by the way, which is kind of also a success, but more of a puzzle game. But Half-Life was truly like an adventure game and had a very riveting story. That's why it was a science fiction story. I've played Half-Life 1, but not too often because the original didn't look too good. Half-Life 2, played it a lot, and it ends with a cliffhanger. And then they never made Half-Life 3. And so this has been this ongoing, almost a myth now for gamers. Like, will we ever see how this story ends? Because we've been waiting since 2007 for a sequel to Half-Life 2. And so every once in a while you would get these rumors like, oh, they're working on Half-Life 3. It's coming. There's going to be an announcement, and then it would be totally something different. And every time you have this, people get their hopes up, and it's, no. And so when Valve entered the virtual reality market with their virtual VR goggles, also integrating it into Steam. So Steam VR is still right now the biggest platform for VR. And I think that Facebook is trying as much as they can to make Oculus kind of a rival product. Once Valve stepped into the world of VR, there have been rumors, well, maybe they will what they need is a killer app. They want everyone to buy their stuff and not Oculus. So they need a killer game. And why not Half-Life? Well, turns out that is exactly what they were planning. And so it has just been announced that there will be a Half-Life sequel, the first sequel in more than 10 years, called Half-Life Alyx. And the name Alyx comes from the female protagonist of Half-Life 2. We never knew how her story ended. She was also an NPC, so a non-playing character. But apparently in this new VR game, which apparently, according to Valve itself, is going to be the best in the genre. It's going to be one of the tentpole virtual reality games that has ever been developed, at least for the time being, because, of course, technology evolves very quickly. But we will get to play her. And that also indicates that this is going to be, story-wise, a sequel to Half-Life 2. So this is very, very big for gamers. I just hope that they can deliver and that it won't disappoint us because, well, expectations in 12 years' time can grow to heights that you can never match. Think of Star Wars. You know, Star Wars is never going to be good enough for some Star Wars fans, except if you're me. Any Star Wars is good. And then at the end of this segment, I would briefly mention my plans for 2020 when it comes to filming equipment. One of the things that I noticed when I looked at my stuff from New Zealand is, if only I would have had a drone. This is a landscape that just needs drones. Now, I don't know about the regulations in New Zealand for drone flying, but there are just shots and circumstances where you need a drone. I don't have a drone yet. I heard that DJI just came out with an even smaller drone than the last one that they issued, and this one weighs almost nothing. You can literally put it in a backpack and not even feel it. That's the kind of equipment that I like. And the same thing is important for another piece of equipment that I want to get for my M50, my Canon M50, and that is a gimbal. I have a gimbal for my phone. I have a small gimbal like the mini DJI, which is fine for small, like I did a behind the scenes episode on my vlog a couple of months ago. That was filmed with this, all-in-one drone or gimbal. It has both the stabilizer and a camera. The camera itself doesn't work too well indoors. It needs a lot of light, and that makes it not very useful for me. But there are a few gimbals that I'm looking into. DJI is a gimbal. There's also June. like a Chinese brand that has a pretty good gimbal. Not all of them work well with my camera. That's the problem. And a lot of the more professional vloggers and YouTubers, they don't use Canons. They use Sony, the Sony A7 III. That's basically the best one. My cameraman uses that. And so, and that works really well with the gimbals, but unfortunately, like the Chinese gimbal doesn't work with my Canon M50. So I'm still looking into it, but what is super important for me is that it is light and portable, because I'm always on the move and I love filming while I'm traveling, but I don't want to travel carrying like so much equipment on my back. And then the final thing that I'm hoping to be able to purchase next year is better microphones. I currently use handover microphones that I got from the broadcasting company. They're really old, and the audio quality is really subpar. They always have to do a lot of audio fixing later on to make it better. So I want better microphones. But also the problem is, for every microphone, you need a receiver and a transmitter. So if I have two people, or I want to mic myself plus the person that I'm interviewing, I can't because I need two receivers. And my current camera setup is so lightweight and so small that I can't put two receivers on there. And I don't want to walk around with another audio recorder. So there is a system that's out there where you can have two transmitters and one receiver. It's expensive. That's a problem. But I think it will really help me to be faster, to film more in less time, to be more efficient. And that's what it's all about. Time is money in the world of TV production. But also, time means the more I can do, thanks to modern equipment, the more I can share. So that's what I'm hoping to do. That's why some of you are supporting me on patreon.com/FatherRoderick. It's so that you can help me to get this stuff. Anyway, thanks for listening. I will see you next week. I'm now going to record the extra podcast for my patrons. See you next week. So that was episode... I don't know what number this is. I should look this up. Let me go. I'll be with you in a second in the chat room, by the way. Just briefly doing the post stuff. So what I'm doing now is I'm transmitting this file straight from my Rodecaster. I put it in podcast transfer mode. Recognized as a USB device by my computer. There, it shows up now. And then I take this episode. It's a WAV file, put that on my desktop somewhere. So that's usually a very big file. So what I do then is I open Adobe Audition, and I resample it in 120 kilobytes per second. So, you know, that's still stereo sound. Sounds good enough for audio, for podcasts. But it makes the file, reduces the file size to only a few % of the original WAV form. And then I synchronize that through Google Drive so that Inge, who's upstairs, can take that file and post it in our current service that we use for podcasting distribution, which is Podbean. And then on the basis of that, we create a post in our WordPress system, and that post feeds the RSS feed, which ultimately is used by the podcast listeners to download this show automatically. So that's kind of the workflow that I have to do every week, and I'm so glad that I don't have to do everything myself, because especially this the technical side, uploading it, posting, it's a ton of work. What I also sometimes do, I wonder if I can share I can probably share my screen with you. Let me see. I would like to record this computer screen. Okay, I need to change the system preferences, because then I can share that with you. Ecamm Live app. Oh, okay, later. Right.
Hold on. Unlock. There we go. Okay. No. Whoops. Where am I? Okay, am I back? I don't know if you saw this. Check your... oh, it switched to the webcam for audio. Okay, did it now? Let's take a look at the microphone. Built-in microphone. Okay. Yeah, I think it just disappeared. So now the audio is terrible. Sorry. Oh, I know what happened. Of course, it switched to the other... Because I'm using... Sorry. I'm right now using the Rodecaster as a USB device. So it's no longer available as a microphone. That's why the audio, the microphone, is so crappy all of a sudden. No worries. It's totally my fault. We'll fix this. Or not. All right, let me update this. Was this 13? That sounds like my show. So were you guys able to see my computer screen or not? Because that's what I don't really know. If I press this, are you still able to hear me, and can you still see the screen? Probably not. But anyway, doesn't matter. This is not something to experiment with. I'll just switch back to the camera and to the crappy built-in microphone of the Apple. I do this quickly because I want to go and have lunch, but this needs to be posted to the feed before the end of at least Inge's workday. I'm pretty happy with the lights, actually. It's not totally there, but it is getting there. All right, let me quickly save this as an MP3. And we're going to save this into Google Drive. Normally I do this after recording the after show, but I'm a bit in a hurry right now. Okay, what's the episode number? 129. Right. Hello. Why doesn't it work? That's weird. So FR0 129. Save. Whoa. Okay. 128. All right, so it's now saving to this lower bitrate and doing MP3 compression. In the meantime, I'm probably already... I'm wondering if I turn the Rode...
I wonder if the audio gets back to normal. I think it does. I totally forgot that it was... Yeah. So now the audio should be fine again, right? Okay, that means yeah. I know. I'm starving too. I need to eat. I see browser background and can still hear me. Okay. Very good. All right, let's quickly record the after show and then it's time for lunch. Hey there and welcome to the after show. I'm Father Roderick and this is the after show that accompanies episode 129 of my weekly show. And as usual, got a nice group of people in the chat room and I just go through their questions and answer them. So, well, I have something to talk about basically. Every time I go online, people are doing a lot of Star Wars memes because, of course, I'm also that Star Wars priest that people can relate to, hopefully. So let's just scroll through all these Star Wars jokes. And then Ruben says, I didn't know you lived in Amersfoort. I'm from Ede. Have you ever been there? Yes, I have. Ede is not far from here. It's near Wageningen, where my fellow priest, Father Henry, works. So I've been many times in Ada, and it's just a few train stops away. Wolfgang is from Germany, and relaxing Arabic ASMR says, I love his happy smile. Welcome. Patton Frodo is counting down to the rise of Skywalker. Yeah, only a few weeks away. It's crazy to right now, as we speak, they're probably putting the last touches to the final cut. It must be so stressful to be J.J. Abrams right now. And then there was Berlin in America, but they pronounce it Berlin. Okay, interesting. Could you speak French for 10 seconds? Warlock wants me to do, because Warlock is from Paris, I think. Et bien sûr, on peut toujours parler un petit peu en français, parce que ça me plaît. Parce que la langue française est une des plus belles langues du monde. Voilà. So that was it. Greetings from Estonia. Yeah, I can't speak Estonian, sorry. GDB Film says, don't change ever. I like the way you are. Well, I try to be just who I am. GDB Films, by the way, is from Madrid, Spain. ¿Qué tal? Have you ever been in Madrid? Yes, several times. Love it. Love Spain. And I want to go back there next year. Allen says, you should come to my part of the world where they filmed the Star Wars movie on Lake Ullswater. Where would that be? Because I don't know where that was. That's cool. They just finished the new Dr. Dolittle movie here also. Now I really don't want to know where you live, because I have no clue. Are you going to watch The Witcher when it comes to Netflix? Michiel wants to know. Yes, I certainly am, because I played this first and the second Witcher game. The first and the third. I didn't really get into the second game. And it's a fascinating, it's a Polish story, Polish author. And it's a fantasy. It's a little bit on the dark side from what I've seen from the trailer. But yeah, I'll certainly watch it. Patton Frodo hopes that we get a Doctor Who Christmas special this year. I totally forgot about that tradition. Yes, I want to see the new season with the female Doctor. I haven't seen an episode of that. But that's a great thing to look forward to. I need to go back and rewatch some Doctor Who, because that's totally something to do during the Christmas holidays. That would be a lot of fun. Apparently, according to Warlock, Jodie is good, but the season was awful. I'm sorry to hear that. Can you talk about what you think about the spoiler in The Mandalorian? Well, if you want to hear my thoughts about spoilerific material in The Mandalorian, check out my playlist. It's called Father Roderick Talks Star Wars. If you're watching my YouTube channel, just click on the channel itself, and then it'll be on the front page. But I try to avoid spoilers here, because I've got an international audience with lots of people that haven't been able to get Disney Plus yet. So I just want to spare them a little bit. Important question from Adam. Will the new YouTube cop-out rule be affecting your YouTube channel? So that is something that all YouTubers got a warning about. Is new regulations in the United States that make you liable if you produce content that is geared towards kids, but you don't label it as such. Of course, this is for the protection of children online, which I'm all for. It makes it a little bit difficult, because I do a lot of stuff that may have an audience that is also comprised of children, but it's not necessarily made for children. And so, but it is up to the producers, not YouTube, to label that correctly. And so YouTube has kind of stepped out of this and was like, let you as a YouTuber are responsible to correctly label it. What it means in reality is that I've been relabeling all my Lego related stuff as being for children, which it's not, because when I'm building Lego, I'm having conversations that are very similar to the one that I'm currently having with you. But Lego is perceived as something that is for kids, whether that is justified or not. That is something that we can debate upon, but I do think it is important to label that. It means for YouTubers that make their money with advertisements on YouTube that they may actually see lower income, and especially if you're a YouTuber that focuses on Lego, for instance, because YouTube, once you label something as for kids, they don't put targeted advertisement. You can't comment anymore. That is a big thing. Actually, that's something that I'm going to miss in these Lego-related videos, because it's all about the conversation that you have. But, well, for the protection of children, they don't allow commenting. Plus, they stop gathering information from the viewers of those videos. In my case, I'm not too worried. Most of what I do, Lego-wise, is live. So it's all about that live conversation. And I can always repeat in the video itself what people are typing in the chat itself. So it's not a problem for me if the chat and the comments are removed by YouTube after the live stream, because I can still have that interaction. And I don't depend on advertisements. That's one of the reasons that I have patrons. That is to be able to be free to do what I want without being tied to all these rules and regulations. I never wanted to make my money with advertisements because I'm not behind that kind of stuff. My life is about, and my message is about other things. And so I'm very happy that YouTube is around and that they make money by doing advertisements. But I'm also very glad that I don't have to have advertisements on my shows in order to produce them. So that's why I'm so happy to have a system like Patreon, because it is a different, and I think a much better source of income, because it's really the people that support me because they believe in what I do, and I'd rather have some income from that to finance my work than getting income from people that accidentally click on, this advertisement for a new mattress or a vitamin supplement, which I have nothing to do with and is not part of my message. Let's see, what other things do I have? We got the English crew, greetings from Thailand. And Noah is in school right now watching this, probably secretly. So let's see, what else have we got? Pat and Frodo just wanted to say thank you. Well, thank you for thanking me. It's always Dunder Mifflin in The Walking Dead says, have you seen the Netflix series The Toys That Made Us? It immediately made me think of you. Yes, I did watch a couple of episodes. Love that format. Love that style of television. I haven't watched everything yet. But yeah, a lot of those toys were the toys of my childhood. So love really watching that series. And then the rest of the conversation is a little bit about the audio problems that I had earlier on while streaming. I'm just trying out some stuff on the Rodecaster here in conjunction with streaming. One more question. Wispa wants to know, while I visited Durham, did you visit the Lego Cathedral? Yes, I did. The Lego Cathedral is actually in the store of the cathedral itself. I didn't take any photos, though, but it was pretty cool. How far have you come in Deep Space Nine? Didn't make any progress, thanks to Disney+, but I'll let you know when I continue to watch that. Ullswater is the second largest lake in the English Lake District, Michiel says. So Ullswater that's where apparently they filmed Star Wars and some other movies. I need to go and visit. Very cool. Samuel says, you're such an inspiration. I have started to use my rosary again, and that is thanks to you. Wow, that is so kind of you to share that with us. Did you always want to become a priest? No, not at all. I want to become an astronaut and a film director and a game programmer and anything but priest. So I guess that's why it's called a vocation, because I didn't come up with it. Are you planning to play Jedi Fallen Order? Question from Barn. I will, but it's still very expensive right now, so I'm waiting for this game to become a little bit cheaper. I don't need to have the latest, greatest thing. And I also don't really have time for any gaming right now. It's just, I'm trying to survive until Christmas, and then the Christmas holidays, maybe during Christmas holidays, I'll try out that game if I can find a good bargain. Snoke says, keep your videos intelligent for kids. I like these videos. Your language is so intelligent. Even with the toys in the background or reviewing, speak through the video. Okay. Also, you can keep advertisements from your video so kids are not exposed to the advertisement algorithm. Yeah, I totally agree. That's why I don't want to have advertisements, because, kids are also watching this. And Samuel has offered me to pay for Jedi Fallen Order. I know. I should have gotten back to you in exchange for, mentioning the magician's little business that he had. But it's mostly just not being able to deliver. If I would have the game, I wouldn't have time to play it. And so I would feel very embarrassed about not having time to stream that game. But maybe after Christmas, we'll stay in touch. Grumpy House, good morning, Father. I can't watch the full show, but just wanted to say hello on my way out. Cheers for the morning positivity. Well, Hope you're able to keep that positivity for the rest of the day. Chickens wants to know if we can find this show on Spotify. If not, you should definitely get on that. No pressure, though. I think we were always unable to put it on Spotify. That had to do with our previous podcasting host. Now that we're on Podbean, I think there is actually a way. I'll talk with Inge. Talk about it with Inge, and we'll see if we can make that happen. Because yeah, Spotify is more and more a place where people look for podcasting content. Thanks for the suggestion, and that's it for today. I'm going to get some lunch, and I wish you a great day, and I will see you next week. Take care. Bye-bye now. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.